The Uranium One scandal has everyone fighting over yellow cake. A little help here? Thanks. The charge is that the Clintons took $145 million from uranium investors and the Russians in exchange for giving 20% of America's uranium reserves to Russia. Today, we're going to break this story down. Our story begins in 2005 when former President Bill Clinton met filthy rich business tycoon Frank Giustra. I like money. I like money too. We should get, more money, okay? Frank Giustra owned a small and new Canadian uranium company called Eurasia Energy. Back then, everybody wanted to buy a big chunk of Kazakhstan's uranium market because Kazakhstan held 1/5 of the world's uranium supply. But the Kazakhs weren't interested. I like money. Nah, son. I like money. Talk to the hand. But now Frank Giustra was friends with Bill Clinton, and Bill Clinton was married to Hillary Clinton. In 2005, Hillary Clinton was actually Senator Hillary Clinton, and she was on the Armed Services Committee, specifically the Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities. And that subcommittee controlled the distribution of hundreds of millions of dollars in financial aid from the United States to Kazakhstan. According to Mukhtar Jarvishev, who was at that time the president of Kazakhstan's government-owned energy company, Rosatom, Hillary Clinton canceled the meeting she was supposed to have with their future prime minister, Karim Massimov, and would not see him because investors connected to the Clintons were having problems and, quote, all manners of measures would be taken, unquote. Jarvishev also said that he got a phone call from Tim Phillips, an advisor to Bill Clinton, and Phillips told him that there would be no meetings with Hillary Clinton until the Kazakhstan officials approved Giustra's uranium deal. Hillary tags in Bill, slick willies up. Frank Giustra and Bill Clinton traveled to Kazakhstan. The official reason that Bill Clinton gave for the trip was that he was going to talk about HIV and AIDS. But Kazakhstan didn't have an AIDS problem. Only 0.1 to 0.3% of the population had the disease. This is Nursultan Nazarbayev. He's a bad hombre. He's been the dictator, the president of Kazakhstan since 1990. He's famous for his horrible human rights record, including restricting the freedom of speech, jailing political opposition and journalists, torture, and even decapitating dogs as a means of intimidation. On September 6th, in 2005, Bill Clinton and Frank Giustra had dinner with him, and then Bill Clinton totally ignored America's foreign policy by publicly praising Nazarbayev's human rights record. He even went as far as to say that Nazarbayev should head up the OSCE, which stands for the Organization for Support and Cooperation in Europe. The OSCE is a human rights and fair elections group. I can think of no one better to head up a fair elections group than a guy that won his last election with 98% of the vote. 2 days after the meeting with Nazarbayev, as if by magic or extortion, Frank Giustra signed 2 memorandums of understanding and became partners in 3 uranium mines. This took Eurasia Energy from a virtually unknown shell company to a major player in the uranium game overnight. The deal officially closed on November 7, 2005, and weeks later, Frank Giustra just so happened to give $31.3 million to the Clinton Foundation. Then Frank Giustra co-hosted Bill Clinton's 60th birthday party blowout. It was a star-studded event. Even Kevin Spacey was there. And $21 million went to the Clinton Foundation. That's my kind of birthday gift. The Clinton Foundation, the world-famous humanitarian organization where only 10% of the money collected actually goes to charity. Frank Giustra doled out Eurasia Energy shares to his buddies, including Robert Cross and Ian Tolfer. Then he used BMO Nesbitt Burns Incorporated, GMP Securities Limited, and Canaccord Adams to help take the company public in one of the largest initial public offerings in Canadian history. The companies alone made $25 million on that deal, And Frank's buddies and the companies would go on to donate millions of dollars to the Clinton Foundation. Meanwhile, in Russia, OMG guys, wouldn't it be totes my goats if I took over the world's uranium market? I could totally use uranium to make Russia a world power. Awesome sauce! So in 2006, the Kremlin approved a plan to spend $10 billion to increase Russia's annual uranium production by 600%. This plan was going to involve Rosatom. Rosatom is Russia's government-controlled nuclear power agency. Rosatom built the Bushehr nuclear reactors in Iran and supplies Iran with uranium. 20% of America's energy comes from nuclear power, and America used to produce a surplus of uranium, but companies like Rosatom were able to force American uranium companies to shut down by selling uranium for way less because they are state subsidized. 2007 is a really interesting year for the Uranium One scandal story. In February, Eurasia Energy announced that it would merge with a South African mining company named SXR Uranium One. This merger would allow Frank Giustra's buddies to control 60% of the new company, which would just be called Uranium One. But before any of that could happen, they would need permission from the government of Kazakhstan. That same month, Mukhtar Jarvishev was sent to Bill Clinton's home, where Jarvishev said that they talked about uranium and nuclear power. The merger went through in a $3.5 billion transaction. In just 2 years, Eurasia Energy went from 10 cents a share to $7.05 a share. Frank and his buddies made an insane amount of money, and Nazarbayev was granted permission to head the OSCE, but he waited until 2010 to do so. One of the ways that people try to debunk the Uranium One scandal is to say that Frank Giustra divested himself from Uranium One in 2007 because he claimed he sold off all of his shares that year. But Frank Giustra actually remained financially tied to Uranium One through Endeavor Financial, because Endeavor Financial was providing financial advice to Uranium One. After the merger, Uranium One began buying uranium assets in the United States, and they got to the point where they owned 20% of America's uranium reserves. In June, Frank Giustra pledged that he would give $100 million to the Clinton Foundation. Additionally, in June of 2007, Frank Giustra set up the Clinton-Giustra Sustainable Growth Initiative, which would later be known as the Clinton-Giustra Enterprise Partnership and the Clinton-Giustra Enterprise Partnership Canada. Remember that, because I'll be coming back to it later in part 2 of this video series. In the next video, I'm going to detail exactly how the Clintons were able to hide hundreds and hundreds of foreign donors from Obama. Plus, there are going to be more pop culture references, crazy parties, and celebrity appearances. You know, I'm allergic to cats, but for some reason, these ones don't seem to bother me. If you like this video, subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and please share it. I'm right from right, left to center, and if you're watching, you're probably right too.